When we say God, I'm not talking about this old man in the sky with a long beard looking down and punishing people for sinning and rewarding people for doing good deeds. That's not God. That's a very childish view and a very elementary perspective on mysticism. I mean, on spirituality. Even in religious texts, we know that the stories in these religious texts are deeper than they appear on the surface. When it says God got angry or God got happy, right? God doesn't have emotions. He's not a human. But we try and portray a spiritual concept through a language that we can understand. That's why it sounds sometimes like we're personifying the spiritual. We're personifying God. But God is not even what God is. God is a made-up English word to describe this entity. The word has been corrupted. I don't call Ein Sof God. I call him Ein Sof. That's the name for God in the Kabbalistic terminology. In Hebrew, we call God Ein Sof, the endless. Because there's only one thing that we know about God, and that's that he has no end, no frame, no boundary, no vessel, no limits. Nothing is impossible for Ein Sof. Nothing is impossible for God. So that's the one thing that we know about him. Ein Sof, he's endless. So, or Ein Sof is the light of Ein Sof. If Ein Sof refers to God, then or Ein Sof refers to the light of God. There's a difference between the light of God and God. If you want to talk about it from the perspective of the sun, right? There's a nice example in nature that we can understand it. It's the sun and the rays of the sun. The sun is not equal to the rays of the sun. Instead, the sun emanates light. It emanates heat. It emanates vitamin D. It's not equal to those things that it produces. It produces light, right? So that's a very important distinction. The sun is not the light of the sun. The sun is whatever the sun is in its essence, and what we see from our perspective on earth is a shining bulb of hot rays and heat. But that's what we perceive. That's how we connect to the sun. But we're not really connecting to the sun. We're connecting to the rays of the sun, the heat, the light, the vitamins. That is all effects of the sun. But it's not the actual sun. That's important to make a distinction. Because so too with God, we don't connect to Ein Sof. We can't connect to Ein Sof. Ein Sof is the essence of God. Again, we don't connect to God himself. If we did, then the statement that we cannot see God's face would be false. But we can't see God's face because we can't connect to Ein Sof. We can't connect to the essence of God. However, we can connect according to our level, according to our ability. But there's no levels in Ein Sof. But there's levels to the light. That's why the light of the sun comes in the form of a line, comes in rays, because there's a beginning and an end. A ray, a line, has a beginning and an end. But the sun itself, it's a circle. A circle doesn't have any starting point or any finishing point. It's a circular. So there's two different types of consciousness, two different types of existence. Circular and linear. But that's besides the point. So or Ein Sof is the light of God. That is the way that we relate to God. But in truth, in Ein Sof, there is nothing that exists besides Ein Sof, which means God. From the POV of God, there is nothing but God. From the perspective of the creation, the way we relate to Ein Sof is through the light that we perceive.